ISIS and al-Qaeda have reportedly decided to join forces in Syria against, you guessed it, the U.S.-backed Free Syrian Rebels. This as ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, purportedly still alive, urges his followers to erupt volcanoes of jihad everywhere. With me now, founder of the investigative project, Steve Emerson. Good evening. Steve, reports of two of the most brutal terror groups joining forces in Syria, ISIS and the Nusra Front, part of al-Qaeda. What does this mean?
Well, Judge, I think it's very similar to what Hitler did with Stalin during World War II. It's a non-aggression pact. These two groups were duking it out, and now they don't have to fight each other. Now they can focus their resources on fighting the U.S., fighting the West, fighting Assad. It strengthens each other's group resources insofar as they can now really fight with the intensity that they have, that they intended to have, with the the brutality that they intend to inflict on Westerners and against the against the Assad forces that they fought against, that they were created to fight against.
All right, so we know that ISIS is expert at media, internet, recruiting. Nusra is supposedly the bomb makers, but whether or not they make a decision to fight together or not fight each other, there is no question that the two of these groups together are far more dangerous than one in one direction and one in the other.
No doubt, Judge, because already al-Nusra has declared that it's going to create a similar caliphate in northern Syria, competing now with the caliphate that ISIS is creating in Iraq. So we're already seeing now the emergence of these very strong radical Islamic groups create these territorial swaths of independence that are, returning to the days of Muhammad and the days of decapitations. So you're right, to the extent that these groups now have more independence, and the notion, however, that this administration is, invoking to the Congress that there's going to be opposition created by the CIA and the DOD and the Pentagon by building up moderate opposition is a fanciful notion. There is no such thing as a moderate opposition. The Free Syrian Army is a contrived concept made up of rip-off artists in cafes in Europe that the State Department is pumping millions of dollars into, and they're basically spending it on nothing but themselves. There is no such thing as the Free Syrian Army in Syria. There's no such opposition that is considered moderate. They've been wiped out.
All right. I want to move on to what happened this week with the American soldiers. Actually, there were sailors who were attacked by a mob in Turkey. What's with the Turks? I mean, on the one hand, they've got their tanks on the border watching the fight. On the other hand, we're supposed to be allies, NATO allies. What is going on?
Well, first of all, Turkey, in the last several years, ever since Erdogan took over, has emerged largely in a very hostile, with the hostile environment against the West, against Israel, in a way that has aligned itself with Hamas, aligned itself with Islamic Jihad, aligned itself with the Muslim Brotherhood movements against the United States. It's whipped up hysteria among the Muslim proponents of the Brotherhood in Turkey against the United States. Of course, this attack was by nationalists in Turkey against the U.S. The U.S. has 2,000 members of the armed forces stationed in Istanbul. So it's not surprising to see attacks on the United States, unfortunately, on U.S. soldiers because of the hysteria that's been whipped up by the Turkish hostility to the United States and to the West itself over the last 5 to 10 years.
Why are they still in NATO?
They shouldn't be in NATO whatsoever. If you look at their record on human rights, you look at their record on the issue of freedom for gender rights for women, you look at their record of crackdown on the support for Hamas and radical Islamic terrorism, they should never have been allowed into NATO at all whatsoever.
All right, Steve Emerson, always good to be with you. Thanks. And coming up, I go one-on-one with a liberal